Welcome back to A Little Bit of Cheese, your bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast. I'm your host today, Cody Depius. You had a little bit of Sam yesterday. That video was uploaded just this morning. That is the top 69 players currently in the NBA. That was something that Sam came up with. I actually personally haven't had the opportunity to watch it yet, but I am driving back home for Easter, so I'll probably be listening to that today, and we can talk a little bit about that next week. But if you want any extra content, Sam took it himself to go out there and make a video this week by himself. So Sam's first solo podcast. Go check that out on the YouTube or the Spotify. Today is Friday, and the first podcast that I've personally done in a while, as last week was a little bit crazy, is Sam said, and we said last week, I got married last Saturday. So best day of my life. And the one story that I want to bring up from that wedding that I think everyone on here that is listening will appreciate is that in Bree's vows, Prince Fielder and Super Bowl 45 and the YouTube highlights of both of Prince and Super Bowl 45, they did make a mention in Bree's vows. So for the rest of history, we'll always go back and remember the fact that when Bree and I started our relationship, anytime that she was down, I always felt it forward to give her Super Bowl 45 or Prince Fielder highlights, because those are some things that I always turn on whenever I'm feeling down. So just wanted to bring that up as a little bit of a story, and the fact that that day I wasn't really checking my phone, of course, because it's your wedding, you're supposed to be soaking it in. And over the course of the evening, I was getting Brewer updates, and it was the game that the Brewers actually were up 4-0 in a game where they faced Corbin Burns, and they ended up losing in the bottom of the ninth. So Jackson Churio had like a 450-foot home run off of Burns. So I think a little bit more positive that day than we need to take away from any of the negative, and the fact that Yoel Payamps and Trevor McGill really struggled in the ninth inning. But other than that, the Brewers as a whole have been staying afloat. They are 10-9. They're going to be taking on the Athletics this weekend. Not the Oakland Athletics, not the Sacramento Athletics, just the Athletics. That is from the MLB. I mean, they are playing in Sacramento this year, but you can't call them Oakland, you can't call them Sacramento. They're just the Athletics. But that game will be taking place, well, all three games this weekend, starting today, then Saturday and Sunday. And a little bit of Brewers news coming in just yesterday. Oliver Dunn has been sent down to AAA, and Caleb Durbin has been called up. And this is one of the biggest holes that Milwaukee's had so far on this roster, has been third base, and we knew this going in. I was saying over the course of the entire offseason, how are they going to fill that third base hole? And they haven't been able to do that through the first 19 games of the season. The 29th best OPS in all of baseball at the third base position between Oliver Dunn and Vinny Capra. Vinny Capra is still on the roster. I think that he's there more so for infield depth if anybody ends up going down, which I'll knock on wood right now. The Brewers have stayed very healthy in the infield, where they haven't had to have a fourth infielder that could play second, short, or third, but Vinny Capra is going to be that guy. I don't know how long he stays up on the big league roster either. He has really been struggling at the plate. Oliver Dunn has as well. I think it's kind of funny because the big story before the day he was sent down on Thursday, it was reported, and they talked about it on the TV broadcast and on the radio, that Oliver Dunn was the first Brewer to use a torpedo bat. He actually bunted and got an RBI out of that play, so I kind of thought it was all funny. And then the fact that he was sent down the day after, a little bit sad for Oliver Dunn, but when it comes down to it, it's business, and he was not performing at the big league level defensively, offensively. He's a guy that you were really pulling for, but the expectations couldn't be there. He's a guy that they tried all last year and just wasn't it. So Caleb Durbin, who I personally thought was going to be that opening day guy, he is now going to be who they're throwing in there at the major league level. I think the initial decision made probably by Pat Murphy and Matt Arnold was due to the fact that Oliver Dunn has had previous major league experience, where Caleb Durbin, I don't know if the lineup has been released yet for today, but I would expect either today or tomorrow that Caleb Durbin is going to make his major league debut. Durbin, I'm excited for, just for the fact that at his worst, he is going to draw walks, and he is going to add speed to the base paths. Oliver Dunn nor Vinny Capra have been able to draw walks so far at the major league level, and maybe Caleb Durbin struggles with it too. Maybe pitchers just attack him so much and he just can't hit anything inside the zone that they just have to fire fastballs and anything in the zone to get him out. But at the minor league level, at any level that Caleb Durbin has played at, he has been able to draw walks. He's been a guy that's been able to get on base. The big question is if he can play defense at third. Yes, there are some highlights that you can find from the Arizona Fall League last year, and you can find from his minor league season so far this year, or from spring training this year. But you can see right away the glove is decent. It's solid. It's average to maybe slightly above average, but his arm is below average for a third baseman. I will say that. So the option there would be to keep him at third base and take the defense that he gives you there. Of course, you have Ortiz, who's a average to above average shortstop, and then Bryce Terang, who might be the best second baseman that we've ever seen. That's one option. Or what they've also talked about and what they also tried during spring training was to have Caleb Durbin play second base. You move Bryce Terang to shortstop, where he's going to be solid, maybe even above average, and then you move Joey Ortiz over to third, where he played all last season, had a pretty good year defensively. I think that I'm going to elect to have Durbin play third and just see how it plays out. If the arm really isn't major league there, if it's not strong enough for the big leagues, which really I don't think it has to be all that great. It just has to be playable because of the defense that you already have from Ortiz at short and Terang at second, because those two work spectacularly as a double play combo up the middle. And like I said before, Terang, what he gives you at that second base position, there's so much more value in that position with the fact that you can't shift anymore. So Terang can't be, like he needs a lot more range over on that right side of the infield. The value there is a lot closer to the defensive value you get from a shortstop. And I can hear your questions already. What is the worry, or why would Bryce Terang be even worse at playing shortstop? His arm is not that strong either. They tried to have him play a little bit of shortstop in spring training, and he was dealing with arm fatigue for the fact that he had to sit out a couple of days. The arm, it's solid, it's average, but it hasn't been built up to play shortstop. He actually was drafted as a shortstop, came up to the big leagues as a shortstop, but of course, Willy Adames is already on the big league team, so they put Terang over at second, and the dude became an absolute superstar on defense, and he hasn't had to move since. So that's something that they might try, but I really think that they're going to try to keep Terang at second just for the fact that he's that good there, and we aren't sure if he's going to stay that good or even stay that healthy if you move him over to shortstop. You might deal with arm fatigue, and that might creep into some other areas as well for Bryce Terang. So probably keeping things where it is. I don't know how much of a platoon you're going to see anymore. I think Caleb Durbin is going to get most of the opportunity at third base now, just for the fact that Vinny Capra has not been able to perform at that third base position. So that's where Milwaukee's looking. It's sad to see Oliver Dunn go back down, but he's had his opportunities at the big league level. Of course, last year you would have liked to see him stay a little bit healthier, but Ortiz, that gave him an opportunity to show what he can do at the major league level, and we'll talk about him in a little bit as well. But Caleb Durbin, I think, is going to be your guy at third base for the Milwaukee Brewers, and we just hope that he can figure something out, because if he can't do it, they are going to have to trade somebody. They can't have a black hole over there at third base in the lineup. It's been one of the spots where Milwaukee just has not been able to produce offensively, and at the third base spot, you really have to. That's where your big bopper should be. Third and first, those are your guys that should be hitting in the middle of the order. You shouldn't have your third baseman hitting eighth or ninth, and that's what Milwaukee has had to deal with so far. So that's first big news. I think that's good news that they're at least trying to do something else. I mean, their hand was kind of forced for just the lack of production that they've had so far. But some other good news coming in. Brandon Woodruff will be making another rehab start tonight. This will be his second of the season. He is right on that cusp of building his way up to starting at the major league level once again. He'll be in Appleton. The fastball is playing the 94, 95. The stuff looks good. The fastball shape is a little bit different than what it was before he injured that shoulder and went under shoulder surgery. So we'll see how things go there, but they are really, really optimistic about him. And one of the points that was brought up this week on the Brewers TV broadcast, I think when they were interviewing Matt Arnold, the Brewers general manager, they had him up in the booth with Brian Anderson and Bill Schroeder, and Arnold said that they've actually had to hold Woodruff back from what he wants to do. Woodruff is so ready. He feels like he's physically ready and mentally ready to be back out up there on the major league mound, but the organization, the front office, is kind of holding him back, saying, hey, we don't want to push anything. We want you to be here all the way through the playoffs. Let's build you up as much as we possibly can to feel comfortable in throwing you out there on a big league mound once again. So he's already there. I mean, big woo. Just to see him back out on the mound, that's going to be emotional for everybody in that building to know what he has gone through. Essentially, the last 2 years of his career have just been thrown down the drain. And it's been sad to see because he's one of, at healthiest, probably one of the top 5 starting pitchers we have ever seen wear a Milwaukee Brewers uniform. And it's sad to see. I mean, he's 32 years old. There can be some gas left in the tank, and he is such a hard worker. He's so motivated that he's one guy that can really overcome an injury like this. And we're hopeful for it, and he is going to help this rotation that has been banged up. It's been battered. They've had a couple of guys step up in their absence. And I actually was reading today, and this is a little bit off topic, kind of on topic, but since that Yankees series, actually might be since the Yankees series in that first game, the home opener against the Royals, the Milwaukee Brewers have the best starting pitching ERA in all of baseball. I think that ERA was in at like a 2.38. So they've been able to piece it together so far. Chad Patrick has been incredible. Quinn Priester has pitched really well ever since they brought him in. I know not a lot of people were optimistic about it. I was saying, let's see what happens. They've worked on that cutter. He looks like Chris Hook has been talking in his ear for years. Sorry, getting back into it here. A little bit of a Freudian slip there. But they've been able to piece it together. But any added addition that they get here in this next month is going to be huge. Brandon Woodruff should be one of those guys, and Tobias Myers, it is reported that he should be back next week on the Major League roster. So you're getting 2 of your big dogs back. Aaron Savali will be just shortly after. Nestor Cortez will be shortly after. We're going to have almost too many arms, and you can probably throw somebody in the bullpen, and you can really work on developing those young guys, continuing to work with Tobias Myers and Priester and just everybody in that rotation that's young. It's Myers, Priester, and Chad Patrick that were Chad Patrick believers here. Sorry, his name slipped. You're on the Little Bit of Cheese podcast. We're always going to believe in Chad Patrick. I believe all those guys are going to be cutter-sinker guys, and they're all going to play well with this Milwaukee defense that's been built behind, of course. We'll see what happens with third base, but always reason to be optimistic here. And this is a game that I was going to play with Sam today, but he's busy. He's doing some DJ stuff, so I'll kind of play it, and I'll give my own opinions here. The topic here is going to be, are you worried or are you not? And the name that we're going to give it is the cheese fresh or is the cheese moldy? And then I have a couple of players here, a couple of pieces where I'm going to say if I think these guys are going to be able to bounce back or if I'm actually concerned about them and the way that they go. So the first guy here, is he moldy or is he fresh? Is going to be Rhys Hoskins. And this was much more of a question, I'd say, 4 days ago, but Rhys Hoskins has hit 2 home runs since then. He's got that OPS up to about 750. I think that question answers itself. I think he's fresh. I think he's going to be back. I see more production out of him this year, even with the slow start, than what we saw last year. And even last year, no, the numbers weren't great overall, but he still gave you 26 home runs, and you're going to take the power out of that first base position where you can get it. And Milwaukee has really struggled filling that first base spot since Jesus Aguilar had that one outlier of a season back in 2018. I think Rhys can hit 30 this year. I truly do. I think that OPS might get up around 800 again. He's just been a mainstay in the major leagues. And, of course, he had that ACL injury. He struggled last year. I think some of that was due to the fact that he was injured and was just coming off of an entire season that he had to miss back in 2023. I think he's a good Major League Baseball player. I think he's going to bounce back. That power's in that bat. And Vinny Rottino likes to say this on the Big League broadcast, and I kind of thought about his comment right away and thought, you're a little bit crazy, but he said that Rhys Hoskins has one of the prettiest right-handed swings he's ever seen. And now when I sit back and I look and I think of it, it's just an easy, powerful cut. And I'm excited to see that go to work this year, and we started to see it already this week. I think he's going to be one of those mainstays in the lineup at the 4th, 5th, or 6th spot. I'm excited for what he can do. Rhys Hoskins, you're still fresh, baby. Christian Yelich, fresh or moldy. This one is also interesting. We've seen the home runs. Christian Yelich has 4 already this season, but that batting average, the on-base percentage, the slugging, not looking great so far. All of these, I'm going to sound a little bit fresh. I think with all these, I try to stay optimistic. I know I'll try to bring a little bit of the pessimism that Sam might like to bring at times. But I think Christian Yelich is going to be there. A lot of this, he's been rolling over. He's been striking out, but he looks a lot more comfortable. And the way that he's talking in interviews is he's essentially trying to shield out whatever those numbers look like right now. And I think he's done that to a point where I can't be that concerned. Your floor of a Christian Yelich, I think back to 2020, he batted around 200 but hit enough home runs where that OPS is still around 750. And that is going to play, especially with the kind of character that he is in that dugout. There's still a lot of value there with Christian Yelich, and I think that swing still looks really good. I think that he's going to be fresh. I don't know if he's making an all-star team because the start has been pretty slow, but they're going to get him back in a groove. And this has kind of become a phenomena so far for these Brewers is we haven't seen Christian Yelich and Jackson Chourio get hot at the exact same time. And there's going to be a point when that happens, and that's when the Milwaukee Brewers are going to rip off like an 8 to 10 game win streak. And I think that's going to happen at some point this year. I think Yelich is going to be right there, of course, coming off the back surgery. That might be something that's lingering in his mind, but we've started to see those swings just get a little bit better and the contact get a little bit better. And we've seen those barrels come for Christian Yelich. Not worried about him. Joey Ortiz, fresh or moldy? I'm going to say Joey Ortiz is moldy at this point. We saw him really struggle at the end of last year. He started off hot before big league pitching kind of figured him out. But then it got to a point where Ortiz, it didn't look like he could do what we wanted him or needed him to do offensively. I think defensively, Joey Ortiz is great, and I think that's where a lot of his value is going to come in. But when he's at the plate, I'm seeing like a 650 OPS. I think he's going to be a below average hitter. I don't think you're going to see that guy that was a fringe, maybe all-star last year, through the first half. I think what you see right now with Joey Ortiz, you see a lack of power, you see a lack of plate discipline. I think that's kind of what he's going to mold into, and it's where Milwaukee is just lacked. They haven't added that depth to the infield on the left side. I don't know if Milwaukee has any other answers for him. I don't know if there's anybody on the trade block that they're going to try to look. I think they've kind of given Joey Ortiz the keys, and I'm going to be honest, I'm okay with that because of how good he is defensively, and that is his floor. Like at any point, no matter how bad he's hitting at the plate, he is always going to give you plus defense at the shortstop position. But overall, I smell a little bit of stink. I'm going to say Joey Ortiz, moldy. So there's my pessimism. That's my first spot there. Garrett Mitchell, moldy or fresh? I'm going to say I'm right in the middle, where you're right on the expiration date. You're not quite sure. There might be a smell, but you're going to have to ask some second opinions. I think that Garrett Mitchell is at a point where he needs to see a lot more consistency in the lineup. I want to see Garrett Mitchell hit every single day. I don't care if a left-hander is pitching. I don't care if a right-hander is pitching because of how much talent he has. He continues to have the same problems that he did last year with the high fastball. He just can't hit it. And I think back to the home run that he hit in the playoffs last year. Maybe it was the double, but he had a big hit against the Mets in the wild card series last year, and they had a couple of swings and misses where it was top in the zone, and then they just hung a curveball right down the middle, and that's when he got his big hit. Until he can close up that hole at the top of the zone, I don't think Garrett Mitchell is going to hit like an everyday all-star caliber outfielder. I think that potential is there, of course. I mean, a first-round pick, he's as big and fast, as strong as anybody you're going to see in a baseball outfield. but he really needs to shore up that swing. I think he's confident. I think he's smart. I think he's hardworking. I think that guy is in there, but I'm not quite sure if you're going to see it this year. So I'm going to give you a question mark. I'll say second opinion on the cheese mold factor. Not quite sure if anything's there to be seen, but it still could be really good. I don't know. Sometimes even cheese gets a little bit better. You know, the Limburger, any moldy cheese. Blue cheese. There you go. That's the one I'm looking for. Maybe you could have some blue cheese where you get a little bit of mold before it really comes into form, and maybe that's a Garrett Mitchell here. At third base, the entire position, I'm going to say this one's moldy, and I think it's the whole left side of the infield, and it's not quite the defense. Like I said, Joey Ortiz is going to be fine on defense, but you've already had to send down Oliver Dunn. I think we've already come to a conclusion that Vinny Capra is not a big league everyday third baseman, and with Caleb Durbin, I'm not quite sure what you're going to get. I don't think he's going to be a plus hitter. I don't think he's going to be a plus defender. I think they're searching for answers here, and I think at the trade deadline, a lot of people are going to be calling for Milwaukee to make a move on the trade front. So I'm just going to say it. I'm going to be optimistic, of course. I haven't seen Caleb Durbin play at the major league level, but right now I'm smelling mold. I think Milwaukee was hopeful that Oliver Dunn was going to be able to improve on what he was able to do at the start of last year before he got hurt, but we didn't see that. He wasn't ready, and he had to go back down to the minors. And after that, it was give the ball to Caleb Durbin and see what you got. I mean, he's the big trade piece that you get back in that Devin Williams trade, so there's a lot of value that they were hoping for. We'll see what comes to fruition here for Caleb Durbin, but as of right now, third base, that's a moldy spot. It's a black hole in the lineup, and I don't see it changing unless I get pleasantly surprised. The bullpen, I'm going to pick one fresh guy and one moldy guy, and I don't have any numbers out here, so this is all just my perspective. But the moldy one, this is easy. It's Yoel Payamps. He has pitched terribly this year. He's at the point where if he has one more outing where even a couple of guys get on and he looks off, I don't think he's going to be on this big league roster anymore. So he was the guy that blew it on my wedding day, so I'll always have a sour taste in my mouth for Yoel Payamps. I know Trevor McGill then came on at the end of that ninth inning, and he couldn't close it out, but the closer shouldn't have to come on with two guys on, and that's what they asked for McGill to do. Yeah, he had an off night, but I'm going to blame the guy with a 19 ERA, and that is Yoel Payamps. And the one fresh guy is going to be Nick Mears. I believe he has retired the first 13 batters that he has faced so far this year. We saw how electric he was in the wild card playoff last year. This guy's got really good stuff. He's a maniac. He's an animal. You love having him on that big league clubhouse and in the bullpen. Fresh, certified fresh here on A Little Bit of Cheese is your right-hander, Nick Mears. They got him in the trade deadline last year from Colorado for essentially a bag of chips, and he's been dang near perfect ever since. So that's it for our Brewers talk today. They'll take on the Athletics. We don't know where they're from. They're just the Athletics, but they'll take them on this weekend, a 3-game set, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Milwaukee Bucks will also be in playoff action for round one as expected. They're going to take on those Indiana Pacers. I know Sam would have a lot to say about this series, but we also got some really good, really exciting news on the front of Damian Lillard. He has been medically cleared now. He is no longer on blood thinner medication. He is ruled out for game one, but there is a real possibility that he could come back in this series. It's kind of a dilemma for me because of the way that we've seen Milwaukee play ever since Lillard got hurt. I think that they were able to unlock something with Giannis Antetokounmpo and the rest of this offense in Kevin Porter Jr. and how much he has helped coming off the bench at the point guard position. I'm going to say that there's always reason to be optimistic when you have the better player out there on the floor. And I think Damian Lillard is still, I don't know what he was exactly on Sam's list, but I'm pretty sure he was between 15 and 18. When you have two top 20 guys on the floor, I think that's better than having just one of those top 20 guys. And I think that time that the Bucks were without Damian Lillard is going to be something that's positive when we look back on it, because it was the opportunity to give the keys to Kevin Porter Jr. It was the opportunity to give the keys with this new Bucks roster to Giannis Antetokounmpo to see what you could unleash. And you unleashed a triple-double monster. So you know that that's always in the bag if you need it. And I just have this feeling that the Bucks still have that sour taste of Indiana sitting in their stomachs, and they're going to try to get rid of that this weekend in the course of next week. So I'm optimistic about this. I didn't think the Bucks were going to get their way up to a 5 seed, but they were able to. And that first game will start, I believe, at noon on Saturday. A lot of Bucks-Pacers talk, I'm sure, is coming up on Monday with Sam. Another quick comment that I'd like to bring up. Jordan Love was on the Up and Adams podcast, and he said that the Packers need to bring Jaire Alexander back. I'm not sure if this is what he was supposed to say, according to the reports that have come out from the front office. And you can look it up on Twitter, but Rob Demovsky, really good Packers beat reporter on Twitter, he essentially feels that there's not much of a chance that Alexander makes it back, and that's due to the fact that Green Bay has gotten sick of not knowing if Jaire Alexander is going to be on the field or not any given week. And that's a problem that Sam and I have talked about quite a bit, and we'll see where it goes. There's a lot of question marks, especially with the fact that we haven't heard anything in the media yet recently, and all we've heard is just outside sources like Jordan Love when he's hopping on a podcast and he gets asked about Jaire Alexander, the big topic in Green Bay right now, aside from the draft. And he goes and says, yeah, we'd love to have him back. He even said we need to have him back. So I think Green Bay will always want to have Jaire Alexander on the field, but I understand the frustration that they've had. And I think us Packer fans have had that same frustration along with the front office and with Matt LaFleur on every single week. Is Jaire Alexander going to play? It doesn't matter if he practiced all the way up through Friday. We're still not sure if he's going to go on Sunday. And that's kind of where it came up for Green Bay, and of course the things that happened off the field or with the coin toss and in the locker room and the comments that were made after the season where Jaire Alexander essentially said that there's nothing positive to say, so I'm not going to say anything. I'm hopeful that they've been able to rekindle that relationship, and I'm hopeful that that knee surgery helps a lot, but it's not just the knee either for Jaire Alexander. He's also had that big shoulder injury that was plaguing him for the last 3 years as well. He's banged up. He's getting old. I think Green Bay is going to be fine. You'd love to have that guy on the field, but if he's not on the field and he's still on the roster, I think there's a lot of negative emotion that comes with just having him there. And we'll see if anything happens with the draft, if Gutekunst wants to use him as a trade piece to possibly move up anywhere in the draft. I think that's a possibility. I don't think it's going to happen, but it might also come to a point where Green Bay just decides when it comes June to just release him and save a little bit of the cap space that they have. So we'll continue to update as things come to us on this, but Jordan Love still thinks that Green Bay needs Jaire Alexander on this roster. So we'll do a little cheese grater here as I'm going to give my how does Green Bay win the NFL draft? This is just the question to myself. And I think Green Bay wins the draft if they draft a edge or a defensive lineman. I'd even be okay defensive tackle. I think a defensive lineman overall needs to come in the first 2 rounds, as well as a cornerback. I think you need to focus there. I know a lot of people are saying wide receiver, but the fact that they haven't tried to do anything in free agency, I know they brought in McCole Hardman. I don't think that counts because everyone is saying you needed a number 1 guy. I don't know if you get that number 1 guy in this draft. I don't know. Maybe Tet McMillan is worth trading up for. I don't think Emeka Egbuka is going to be a guy that they trade up for either. I think he's going to be a lot of what you see already with a lot of these Green Bay receivers. There's a lot of 2s and 3s on this roster, and I think your top end, other than Tet McMillan and the wide receiver core in this draft class, is also a lot of 2s or 3s. So I'm with Sam here. I don't know if they go out and do that. I don't think they do, but I think they need to get edge. I think they need to get corner, and I'm not going to say that this is essential, but a linebacker in rounds 3 through 5. I'm really focusing on the defense here, if you couldn't tell. I'm not worried too much about the offense. You would have loved for them to go and get that number one receiver. I think that would have completed a lot of things on this offense, but I don't think that is the vibe around the building right now. So I think that's it. I think defensive lineman as a whole, I think cornerback, and I think you get another linebacker type Edgerrin Cooper. What you saw from him, so versatile. He can rush, he can cover, and boy, can he tackle and chase down runners. I need another one of those guys that runs like they got a fire lit under them. And that's what we saw from Cooper last year. I know that's hard to find. We haven't seen that maybe ever on a Green Bay defense, but go and find that kind of type, that athletic linebacker that can just read something like the back of their hand. It always helps to have another one of those guys. And I know that's how they win the draft. They win the draft by solidifying those 3 positions. And then I think Green Bay has the opportunity to have maybe a top 5 defense next year. And it all starts on the line. And that's what I'm saying. The first 2 rounds, you got to get that stud that'll eat up in the trenches. Well, I think that's going to do it for us today. Just remember this weekend, Brewers Athletics will be playing at American Family Field, and the Bucks will be taking on the Pacers this weekend, first game on Saturday. And then Green Bay is getting ready for the draft next week. I will be actually hosting a show on ESPN Lacrosse, so if you need any local draft coverage and you want to look it up, you can go to the ESPN Lacrosse app. You can check it on. I will be talking with John Papadopoulos and Scotty Gran, a couple of great analysts, and we'll get all your Green Bay, your NFC North coverage at the NFL Draft. So we'll be preparing for that as well. I will see you guys back on Monday. Sam will be back. We'll talk about the Bucks series over the weekend and everything coming up. And we'll talk, of course, some Brewers and athletics. I'm Cody Depus. Thank you for listening today. We'll see you back on Monday for another edition of A Little Bit of Cheese, your bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast.